Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, what I wanted to do was cover Fat Acceptance TikTok again because we oftentimes are trying to lose weight in January. So I know a lot of you guys are starting resolutions or you're trying to count calories. I think that's the most common thing to do, myself included. I have gotten back on the deficit as of yesterday. So I want to just go ahead and provide some alternate reasoning to some of these fat acceptance talking points. And hopefully you guys can get motivated and stuff. I know I watch a lot of this stuff when I feel motivated or when I want to feel motivated, if that makes any sense. So let's go ahead and do it. So this first one is the Jock Scientist. I kind of just did a little bit of a tour of people that I really, I don't know. I guess I don't know how to say this. I'm trying to be a little bit nicer this year, sort of, but I guess I can't. I will just say I wanted to look at really toxic people, basically. So I wanted to kind of pick up and see with what they're talking about, what they're continuing, what they're discontinuing, what is going on. So I made sure to keep it relatively up to date. And yeah, so this is the Jock Scientist. She is covering something that's about beauty. So I want to go ahead and go over it just because I think it's interesting. We're going to read it first in case you guys are just listening. So this person just has a text page where there's it's basically just their face. So they look like they're crying and there's just a lot of text. So I'm going to read it and we're going to react to the text and then we're going to listen to the Jock Scientist respond. So it's hard to convey the gut-wrenching experience of being oh my gosh. It's hard to convey the gut-wrenching experience of being a fat, ugly woman. Having to imagine yourself in a completely different body every time you daydream. Feeling silly for expressing romantic or sexual attraction because your desire has always been the butt end of a joke. Cutting your hair short and loving it, then crying every couple of weeks because performing femininity was the only thing saving you, quote unquote. Seeing relatable, quote unquote, videos about insecurities and knowing they're for pretty people with an acceptable amount of imperfection, not for people like you who are actually fundamentally ugly. There is no amount of body positivity, body neutrality, external and internal validation, and unflappability that can make this experience not painful. This is how I am perceived and always will be, and it sucks. So, I want to go ahead and respond to that myself. I will just say that when it comes to looks, you have to kind of I don't know how to describe this. I feel like I'm going to say it kind of plainly. So typically, when the looks that you have are the looks that you've had most of your life. So you're typically aware of kind of where you stand. When it comes to looks in general, I don't know that it's completely important. All I do know is if you look better, you can get away with treating people badly easier. But typically, if you're a nice person or if you're a good person and valuable person, whatever, typically it doesn't matter if you're not the prettiest person in the world. I think developing a strong moral foundation and developing, ways that you can support others as well as accepting support and being grateful for support in your life from other people, it's a really good way to create, sustainable, nice relationships and not feel so alone. And a lot of this stuff is not really dependent upon looks. When it comes to dating, I would say that typically in dating, you just have to find some kind of way to bring value. Even if it isn't your looks, then you have to bring something else, whether it's, being very supportive, whether it's something like money or something else. You usually could still find somebody. Or you can always lower your standards too and maybe not care as much about looks or find somebody that's more on your level. I know that that's probably not what a lot of people want to hear, but this is just the honest truth when it comes to this. Not everybody is a beautiful person, and that's okay. I think we need to not base so much in it, because at the end of the day, everybody's looks fade eventually, and I don't think that it's something that we should entirely base our entire self-concept upon. I don't think it's healthy at all. But so much of the conversation around obesity and fatness has to do with looks, and it has to do with perceived beauty. And in the case of obesity, it is something that does dampen your looks, but it's something that you can do something about. When it comes to a haircut, you can have an ugly haircut, or you can change it. There are certain things that you can change within your appearance. It really depends on how much you care about it. So I do find it interesting that this person says that she cut her hair short and she loved it, but if she finds it ugly, or if she finds herself ugly, then maybe she doesn't love it as much as she thinks she does, right? So I think it's a very bizarre text chain. I know that a lot of these things are not rational. They're just emotional, and people don't always think clearly when it comes to these kind of emotional topics, which is why I don't know if TikTok is really a good outlet for it. But let's go ahead and see what the jock scientist said in response.
This video came across my For You page recently, and it's been weighing heavily on me since. Pause to read. This is the fundamental flaw of what body positivity has turned into. I view the current movement the same way that I view toxic positivity.
So she's saying that body positivity became about accepting your body. And she's, in my opinion at least, the assumption I'm making with this is that she's stating that body positivity originally had to do with fat liberation. That would be my guess of what she's implying here.
Good vibes only. Love your body no matter what. It is so easy to tell people to love their body no matter what, accept all of their flaws and insecurities, if you're someone who's even close to conventionally attractive. And I know that body dysmorphia exists. I have it.
So the thing too about being conventionally attractive is that a lot of times you don't always know who's attracted to you, who isn't. Well, obviously you can tell, but sometimes you can't perceive your own attractiveness. And that's okay, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I don't, for me personally, I don't tend to focus on those types of things that much, just because a lot of times it's a waste of time, honestly. It's just a huge waste of time. I do think about it in terms of dating or something like that, but other than that, I don't really think about it, and I just know that I have what I have, and I need to, take care of what I have and do the best I can with what I have, and that's about it. So, I don't know. I guess I'm at the point in my journey now where I'm starting to lose the ability to understand focusing on this so much. Maybe that's just me getting older. I don't know.
I know that beauty standards are unrealistic for everybody from a size 2 to a 22. But I also know that there is a social hierarchy of bodies that puts thin ones at the top. And if you're already ready to argue, I want you to sit with and think about, if you are in a thin body or a smaller body and you woke up fat tomorrow, how would you feel?
So this type of thing, it's something that has been used in terms of race a lot. It reminds me of the sort of invisible knapsack logic, where this woman in the 80s, she asked a crowd of white people if they would wake up tomorrow and be black, if they would be okay with that, or if they would perceive privilege or, lack thereof or whatever. So she's using kind of racial logic here for fatness. So what I need the jock scientist to understand is something like obesity is not similar to race, because race is not a pathology. Race is purely genetic. There's no health issues caused by being a certain race. It has nothing to do with that, and it's not relatable at all to obesity. So you can't use the same logic there. Even if I was alone on an island and I was thin and I woke up morbidly obese the next day, it would affect every aspect of my life, from my ability to survive, to my ability to breathe, to my ability to walk, all of these different things, and that's just like very, very surface level stuff. It has nothing to do with like the social factors. Maybe, like I said, except in the case of dating. But in the case of dating, you're not entitled to anyone's attraction. And even if you're thin, you can still be ugly. Let's just keep it 100. It is what it is, right? So I don't like this comparison or this logic at all from the jock scientist. I think it's really stupid.
You don't gotta tell me, just think about it. And what a lot of people who are a body positive influencer or creator miss, especially if they are in smaller body sizes, including mid-size, including small fat, is telling people to love their body no matter what is counter to what society tells people in plus size and fat bodies. As evidenced by when a fat person or plus size person says they love their body, says they have no interest in losing weight, says they do not care that they are fat, they are told they're going to die at 30. They are told that they are disgusting. They are told that they need to hide. They are told that they are promoting obesity and unhealthy lifestyles.
So I just need, I think that can be true for some fat people, but I have told my audience over the past couple months that weight loss was not my intention, during the months of November and December. I said it flat out. I wasn't treated badly at all. I was very honest about it. And it was what it was. During those months, I still recovered immensely in terms of my hypothyroid journey, in terms of my hormone health and my overall health, especially mentally. But also physically, I am tolerating this winter so much better than I ever imagined I would. Especially considering I started a deficit again and I have eliminated added sugar from my diet, which I've attempted to do many times in the past, but I wasn't healthy enough to do it. I needed that easy source of energy, when I was worse off health-wise, which I try to explain the sort of nuances of sugar consumption in some of my videos. I have one I just put out most recently before this one, but because I think it's a complicated subject. But the point is, like, I do okay. I wasn't told I was a horrible person or anything during that time. A lot of people understood, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's because I don't portray it as being healthy, because I don't lie to people blatantly. I don't get that hate, and I also don't pretend that I'm happy. I've never done that. I will say at this point, though, I am a lot happier. So I'm not going to pretend I'm not happy either, but I've come into this year with a lot of optimism for the future, and I will share that. I don't have to be as negative anymore if I feel better. I felt really horrible last year. I feel a lot better already. So let's do this. You know what I mean? So I think people online, most of the time, they care more about honesty and authenticity, and they care that they're not being lied to. That's the kind of stuff that makes people really mad, I've seen.
An example of this being, including this video, plus size creators constantly turn their duets and stitches off because, to be honest, a lot of y'all are nasty. And this has led to the movement of body positivity no longer being a safe space for plus size people. And they created the movement. Without fat people, without plus size people.
Okay, so she's kind of upset because she's thinking that body positivity was primarily for fat people. And a lot of people don't agree with that. So that's their own thing. I don't really personally care. I'm a body neutral person. But I do find it funny how the body positivity movement, they're constantly arguing about what it is. It's kind of hilarious to me, but
Body positivity wouldn't exist at all, period. And now I see so much like coded anti-fat language within body positivity of thin bodies making rolls on themselves because, oh my god, the horror that you have fat on your body. Or like, no babe, that's not fat, that's a uterus, it's normal for it to stick out. Okay, what if it's fat though?
I think a lot of those types of creators, they're just trying to advocate for the fact that what is promoted on fashion magazines is sometimes airbrushed, not realistic. What is told to us is beautiful, especially towards women. It's not necessarily real. And to be honest, they've done a lot of research where a lot of men, they've like surveyed men and they've surveyed women on what the ideal female body type is, and a lot of men, they actually view it as a little bit heavier than like the fashion industry would say, because the fashion industry, they it's like stick thin, or always was, I guess, in the past. I don't really know anymore. It's confusing. Everything's confusing these days, so I don't really know anymore. But back in the day, it was very, very real thin, and most men were not actually attracted to that. They were more attracted to, you know, kind of like an average body type for women, which I would say is probably around 25% body fat, which is also when a woman's at like peak fertility in terms of biologically, which makes sense. So there is this concept within fashion magazines and stuff where they're telling women that they have to have a body that is not womanly, or they have to have a body that is extremely rail thin, especially if that isn't natural for them. And that is something I could agree with in terms of body positivity. I'm for reality, whatever it is, you know. If you're a woman, you're going to have a woman body, you know, which means you're going to have some fat and you're going to have boobs and this and that, you know what I mean? It's going to all look different. But the point is, like, I think there is such a thing as a toxic ideal. I think right now we're experiencing the complete opposite, where now we're being told that being morbidly obese is beautiful, which is another toxic ideal that's unhealthy. Like, why can't we just have it be normal? I don't get it. I don't get it.
And before I get accused again of gatekeeping body positivity, I'm clarifying the goals of this movement. Wanting to love yourself despite your insecurities is great. It is an individualist approach to a systemic problem, though.
See, so she's talking about the political aspect of it.
That people can't love themselves into proper medical care or job opportunities or not being constantly bullied for just existing in public.
Okay, so this is where I get bothered a little bit, because there are a lot of people who have never been fat and they listen to her and they believe that that's how it is, and it's not. Like, I will say, as a fat person, no, that's kind of too much. You know, even her herself, she's had plenty of job opportunities. She's a fat person. I don't know. It's just like she's her double think is interesting because she'll brag about all her career stuff and like all the stuff that she has going for her, but then she'll say that fat people don't have opportunities, but she is fat. And then she'll also gatekeep body positivity and say that these other women aren't fat enough and that she's fatter than them. So it's like, make it make sense, shock scientists. Like, you have to choose a narrative and then stick with it, because I see a lot of different ones with you, and it's very irritating.
If you genuinely want collective freedom from body image issues, from unrealistic beauty standards, from fat phobia, then you center the individuals who suffer most because of those institutions.
They want to.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to William. So I haven't looked at William in forever. So he did actually have a holiday one, but I just felt like it was too basic because it was just like when you see somebody at the holidays and you're fatter now and you know whatever, then they were just like all like he was all extra about it. It was just too typical. This one I found interesting though because I do have experience with BED. So I kind of wanted to see his take on this and explain to you guys my take on it, or and maybe just a different perspective, because I think I mean you guys can let me know what you think in the comments, but yeah, I'm not 100% in agreement or disagreement with this. So I think it requires some nuance, and I wanted to talk about it because I feel like I could do that. So let's do it.
My diet to stop binge eating. Follow along if you want to see my transformation. Please do not do that to yourself. And why not? It's going to help. I just need to have more self-control. Look, if you're truly struggling with binge eating disorder or binge eating in general, as many do.
Okay, so I just want to say here, those are two very different things. So already William is miseducating through like a sort of impression. So again, TikTok is so quick, right? So when you just shout something out like that, people get an impression. That's how a lot of manipulation occurs on TikTok. BED and BE are two extremely different things. BED, it has to be, eating a lot, numerous times for months. Okay, so it's very, very, very often, at least once a week for 3 months, at least. I believe that was the diagnostic criteria the last time I checked it. So that's very, very, very specific. And it can be more mild. So it could be that once a week type of vibe, or it could be every day. I always talk about back in 2018, I had one of the most insane relapses. It was really the last one. It was like the last thing. But I was eating 7,500 calories a day for 3 or 4 months. I think it was like almost 4 months. That is BED. So BE is like, oh, I'm eating a lot today. Maybe you're eating a lot on a holiday like Christmas. We just had Christmas, for example. A lot of people eat a lot on Christmas and Thanksgiving. Maybe that could be considered that, but it depends. Again, it's like BED is when you're eating a lot within a very specific emotional context and emotional distress due to a trigger. Just eating a lot, it could be for any reason. It could be because you're celebrating something. It could be because you want to that day. It could be because, whatever. There's a difference between overindulgence or indulgence or having a feast day, and a difference between having BED. So I did not like the conflation there. There are some times where people eat a lot of something if they've restricted it too much. So for example, if you haven't eaten meat, like I didn't eat meat for 2 or 3 weeks back in 2015. And I was on a trip and I finally just was like dying for meat, and I got it, and I ate like 2 whole steaks and racks of ribs, and I ate like so much meat that day. That was kind of like, BE of meat because I was restricted. It's the same thing when I've cut carbs drastically. I have binged on carbs because it's something that's so restricted. So it's this very specific nutrient, but there has to be like some kind of restriction prior, and that would be a physical type of thing. But that usually ends. BED, again, it goes on for at least 3 months, right? It's a mental health issue. There's a difference between physical and mental. So I really didn't like that he combined those two things, because that makes people think, oh, well, I ate a lot on Christmas, that means I must have BED. No, that's not what it is.
One of the worst things you can do for yourself is start a diet.
So this is interesting because A lot of times, if you have very severe BED, you are very overweight, myself included, right? This is how I got very big. It was because I had this disorder when I was a teenager, especially. And so I don't think it's necessarily good advice to blanket statement say nobody should have a diet, because diet is synonymous with trying to lose weight in a lot of American culture. And for a lot of people that have struggled with BED, weight loss is a part of their recovery. Now, it's definitely a later part of the recovery because you have to do the mental health aspect usually first, which is why you should start as soon as possible. If you are a teenager and you have BED, you need to get help immediately. You need to start fighting it immediately, because it probably will take years to overcome. I know that that's not what people want to hear all the time, but depending on how severe it is, mine took me about 5 years to completely overcome it, which I have. But you gotta be like, I fought it tooth and nail, like white knuckling it levels, okay? It's tough. So you have to definitely start as soon as possible. That's what I would suggest, because you want to have enough time to then get healthy after. Like if I would have waited till I was 30 to start fighting my ED, I don't think I would be here. I'm going to be honest. So, and there are a lot of people who have passed away around the age because they have severe BED. So it's dangerous. So anyways, I don't like that he said that, because even for me, like I'm pretty far away from that at this point. And when I heard him say that, it made me feel some kind of way as somebody who has had this. And I was like, am I doing the wrong thing? Like it made me question it. And it's like, gosh, what a toxic person. I can't think of something more necessary for me to do than to eventually lose this weight. It's a part of recovery. It's like somebody who has a very, very restrictive ED. It is a part of recovery to regain weight, to become a healthy weight again. So I feel like this is incredibly misguided of him. But we'll get into some of the nuance.
You can do for yourself is start a diet. Why? Because binge eating feeds on restriction.
So I would say that this can be true if this is occurring from a physical state. So when it comes to an emotional, mental illness, it is not necessarily always preceded by a period of restriction. When it comes to more of your short term, like maybe 2 or 3 day binge type of thing, and that's it, then it can be preceded by a period of restriction. Now that is what I would call an addiction to dieting, which has to do with choosing very restrictive diets that cut out entire food groups, entire macronutrients, to then eat a lot of it and you experience a sort of euphoria from it. And there's a lot of people that are addicted to dieting. I did go from my BED to being addicted to dieting. So that was kind of like, it kind of transferred into that. And that was finally defeated for me in 2021 when I started my thyroid protocol that I'm doing. And I finally told myself I'm never going to go keto again, because it was something I was kind of abusing to restrict the carbohydrates so that I could then binge on it to feel a euphoria from giving into that restriction. So I would say, in my opinion, that's kind of different than when I was a teenager and I was binging because I hated myself, because I hated who I was, because I didn't, you know what I'm saying? because I hated the way my body looked, or because I felt like misunderstood, or, you know, too different, or too this or too that, too whatever. It doesn't matter. But that's more of like that mental health aspect that comes in, where it's like body image and self-hatred and like over rumination and anxiety and emotional triggers. That's very different to restricting carbohydrate and then eating it back and forth to feel that euphoria. So I believe that they should distinguish the two things, but I understand, you know, this is the way that it's presented. But regardless, you still have to binge for 3 months. So to have BED. So even if you just did it once, it's not. So I'm just saying, it's very misunderstood. It's a very misunderstood thing.
Binges are almost always preceded by a period of restriction.
So he's not getting it.
And your body...
But I will say, taking out a whole group of nutrients and all this type of stuff, I never advocate for it. I do think it will lead to binging. So in that, I can agree with him. I don't think you should be addicted to dieting. I don't think so.
In your mind, recognize that restriction as a famine, that your body will instinctually try to make up for the amount of food it didn't get and store up for the next time you put your body through that period of restriction.
So I'll translate this to my version. So my version is, when you cut out an entire food group, or you don't eat enough calories, or you do some of these things, it's anti-thyroid. So it creates a situation where your body either doesn't produce enough thyroid hormone, or it cannot utilize it properly, therefore putting your body into a hypothyroid state, or an even worse hypothyroid state. If you're obese, you're very likely in a hypothyroid state because your body is probably not utilizing the hormones correctly. So what that means is that your metabolism will slow down. Then when you eat more, then it's easier to put on weight. And this can happen over and over and over again. So that would be my version of it, my translation of the same thing.
Well, if not a diet, then how am I supposed to stop binge eating? Ideally, you should see a registered dietitian and a therapist if you can afford it. If you can't, Project Heal connects people with resources, and the Alliance holds free support groups every week for people with eating disorders.
So I appreciate those resources offered. So that I do appreciate. So, see, got a little bit of nuance there, you know? So it's not complete anti-William this time, but still like, you know, it's never going to be great. Okay, let's continue.
Binge eating is a mental health problem that deserves a mental health solution.
That's the truth.
You deserve treatment if you are struggling with binge eating. Don't put yourself on a diet.
So that, I would say, you probably will have to lose weight. So, again, let me just put that into perspective as well. Okay, so this is antidietpilot. I will just say, I was looking over her TikTok, and oh my gosh, I could not believe she is just a horrible person. I know that that's bad to say. I know that people don't like to hear those types of statements. But I'm sorry, I can't always be the queen of nuance here. She's horrible, okay? Like, almost all of her TikToks now are about why she doesn't want to tip people, and hating men and hating women and hating everybody. Like, she's mad at women that get irritated, or that say that women don't need to go to beauty stuff every week or whatever. I mean, it's really like petty. She had a video about Black Friday sales not being good enough. Like, everything for her is, I don't want to spend any money, but I want to be rich. And, you know, and then she's always talking about how men don't have money. And I mean, really horrible. Like, very, very vapid, shallow, horrible person. If you are following this person, I genuinely question you. Like, I'm going to say that. Now, I know that that's harsh, but I'm just keeping it 100. She's really awful. So with that said, I'm going to reel it back in, and we're going to get back to the topic at hand. But I will just say, let's get into why she doesn't diet. So this one I didn't watch completely before, so we're kind of going in a little blind. But I thought it was interesting just because I literally am doing a calorie deficit. And so I just want to answer what she says, if that makes any sense.
These are the reasons I don't diet. Notice the I. That means I'm talking about myself.
Okay, but you're still presenting it as, because I'm doing this, you should too. It's kind of implied within anything like this, especially within your content, because you're always judging everybody else, which again, a lot of people do. I do too, to a certain extent, right? That's partly what this channel is. So I'm not calling you out for that. I'm just calling you out for acting as if you're not telling other people to think this way, because of course you are.
If you diet for reasons contrary to these ones, good for you. I think behind the transformation photos and the superiority complex, there's actually nothing more miserable than eating the same foods all the time, planning the next time you get to eat food that actually tastes good to you, and forcing yourself to go work out when you don't like your workout routine.
Okay, so I don't know what the exercise routine has to do with dieting, but I will just say, like, a lot of times for me personally, I eat the same food every day. It's just, I'm very much like a person of habit. You know, I think there is this assumption that everybody loves variety. I don't. I've been very clear, like, well, not really on here, but in my life, like, I'm not into tons and tons of musicians or like tons of different movies or tons of different stuff. Like, I'm a very introverted person, and I'm more of like, I deeply love fewer things rather than like loving a little bit of everything. I'm just not that way. My mom is the complete opposite of me. And we kind of, we butt heads on this a little bit, because she'll be like, do you want to watch this movie? And I'll be like, sure, let's watch this movie. And she's like, but what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? So I do think that this would really apply to someone like my mom, which to what I would say is like, you just have to make different stuff every day. There's, hundreds of foods and so many different combinations and so many different things you can do. You could always experiment. You just have to kind of develop a love of cooking, I would say, if you're super into variety. But for me personally, I'm a routine-oriented person, and I like eating the same thing for a while, and then I move on to something else. So that's just kind of how I am, where I feel like my body craves certain nutrients, and then after a couple weeks, it craves different ones. But I tend to just focus more on like single ingredient foods. I keep it very simple. But even if I'm not eating well, or if I'm eating looser, like a lot of times in December, I was having a lot of candy or whatever, I would eat the same candy every day. You see what I'm saying? So that's just kind of how I am. So I don't know, like, I don't know. I think that that's just very individual, I guess. And I would just say, like, no matter what you're doing, you're eating a diet. So whether it's, a lot of fast food, it's not like you're having 500 different options of fast food a day. It's not like once you've eaten the McDonald's menu, there's just so much more variety at McDonald's. Like, that's not the way it is. You get what I'm saying? Especially when you're fat and you've eaten a lot, you've probably eaten the same foods over and over anyways. So that's just kind of my take on it. I get it. Maybe there are some people that go to bougie restaurants every single day and get completely different things. But in my experience of being a fat person and in knowing fat people in my life, that has not been the case. So I don't even really know what she's talking about here, because she's probably eating similar things still, somewhat, That's what I would think. But I think that she's just kind of lying here.
Hell no. Also, the math just doesn't math when it comes to diet culture. So, like, sugar is bad if it comes from a Kit Kat bar, because that's processed sugar. But if you eat sugar from fruits, that's natural sugars.
So this part, I just think she's not educated at all, which doesn't surprise me. But the reason why people say that is because typically they say it because they think of it as a processing issue. So if it's processed sugar, it hits your blood sugar too fast, and that's kind of the mindset people have. Now, this is why I've talked about sugar on my channel recently, because when you're a very fat person, so I'm talking very big, right? Like over 300 pounds, right? Like in that zone. you don't necessarily feel that hit of sugar because your body isn't absorbing or processing carbohydrates that well. So a lot of times a processed sugar, it can more easily hit you and it can give you energy better. But as I've gotten healthier and less hypothyroid, that easy hit of sugar has become overstimulating, which is why I've now cut it out. But even nutritionally, she's wrong because sugar that is processed is not balanced. And typically people don't understand that in order to balance out sugar, you have to have enough potassium and vitamin C. Those are two very, very important nutrients in regards to sugar. So when you think of fruit naturally has potassium and vitamin C in it. So it's a naturally balanced carb. Something like Kit Kats or candy or whatever doesn't have any potassium or any vitamin C. Now, before people start getting on their high horse about candy, bread doesn't really have potassium or vitamin C either. Neither does rice, neither does a lot of different grains. So it is a nuanced topic. You can balance out your carbohydrate by having lower glycemic fruits, like eggplant, for example, or squash, things like that, or tomatoes, right? Things that are a little bit less sugary but still have a high amount of potassium. That would actually help balance out those grains. I'm not one to necessarily say you have to eliminate everything, but it balances that out. In addition, a Kit Kat, I think she said, would also have seed oils in it, which is very, very not good for carb metabolism. And it is inflammatory. And it will put you in more of a state of hypothyroidism, which a fat person should avoid like the plague. So that kind of thing is much worse than eating fruit. Fruit is basically an ideal carb. It is carbs in a natural form, and I would even say it's essential. So I would go that far. A lot of people don't agree with me. That's okay. We can disagree, but I say it's essential. So yeah, those two things are vastly different for all those reasons.
That's like healthy for you, but then y'all eat like 20 protein bars a week.
So that's true. Those protein bars are basically candy bars a lot of times, and they have seed oils in it, usually sunflower oil, and they have a lot of sugar, which again, a lot of that type of stuff, it's a little bit scammy. So I would just be very wary of those types of foods because they're not the best. There are some brands that are okay, but maybe I'll have to start doing videos where I talk about different brands of stuff, and just look at things. That might be interesting. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for stuff like that, but I don't know. I think for me, I just want to wait a bit until I've lost more weight to like really start talking about the nitty gritty. But I feel comfortable talking about like large scale macronutrients things. But just the like, this brand is better than that. It's like, we'll see, eventually for sure. So anyways, let's continue.
I don't get it. If diets work, they would have worked the first time.
Okay, so diets don't work. It depends on the diet. So there's bad diets and there's good diets. I think my diet's great. It's worked really well for me. But in terms of, when I did keto, it didn't work. When I did vegan, it didn't work. When I did, Weight Watchers didn't work for me. It's like I say on my channel, on the Boulevard of Broken Diets, you will find me. Like, I've tried everything possible, it seems like. So I can understand what they're saying, but it means that there's something wrong with the diet. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. You just have to figure out what actually will work. So that's the biggest thing.
There's no need for 50 plus diets. The reason why there's 50 plus diets is because of money. Next is fat phobia, aka the aversion to fatness.
Okay, so fat phobia as a reason not to diet, I don't know. I mean, the existence of fat phobia has nothing to do with health, has nothing to do with health consequences, has nothing to do with a lack of earning potential because you can't work properly because you're too sick unnecessarily. A fat phobia does not, the existence of fat phobia, it as a concept or wanting to resist fat phobia would not help my dating prospects. I can't think of anything less helpful than not wanting to be fat phobic. I think if I proclaim myself as not fat phobic today, my life would be completely the same tomorrow. It's not an important thing to think about all the time, in my opinion. It's just not going to change your life at all. So maybe for her, she feels like it changed her life, but as somebody who's a very big person, it doesn't change my life if I consider fat phobia or not. I think body neutrality is best, and you just try not to get caught up in social issues of fatness all the time. It does come up sometimes, but ultimately your health and your overall well-being are so much more important than what is considered fat phobic or not.
Now, I know the impact, I know the vibes, and the girlies love the vibes. And lastly, I have no medically necessary reason to go on a diet, so I'm not.
Okay. Well, that's whatever. I would suggest for basically anybody that seed oils are bad. I don't consider them food. They're mechanical, they use it in mechanical processing. It's not it at all. It's completely unnatural. And I would just suggest that. That doesn't mean that, everybody's allergic to gluten or something. Like, that's not true. I'm just saying that's what I would say to that. So, yeah, I guess that's her reasons. So they weren't very convincing, which I guess is good. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Please do subscribe if you like this. And a lot of you guys like the longer form content and you like listening and stuff like that. So I'm kind of reorganizing things. I got some new lights. And overall, I just want to say I'm doing very well this year. I barely even feel like I'm hypo at this point in the dead of winter. So I'm really happy and just honestly grateful. I'm doing my deficit. I'm going to probably get back to the gym by February at the latest, which is pretty good. But right now I'm doing the deficit, and I have eliminated added sugar, and I'm adjusting really, really well. Like I had carrots and they were really sweet, So I think you don't always think about that. But anyways, I'm doing really well. I have not, I tried to cut added sugar a lot, but I couldn't really do it until now because I would get really depressed and feel horrible, and I feel fine. So yeah. Cheers to a hopefully non-hypo 2024 for me. I hope to lose as much weight as I can this year. I hope to inspire and whatnot. Let me know what you guys think down below. I will read your comments. Thank you guys so much. Happy New Year. Let's make this one count. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.